Good afternoon, and welcome to the Florida Priorities Summit panel on the economy. What's next for Florida jobs? I'm Nancy Meyer, president of the Miami Herald, El Nuevo Herald, and the Bradenton Herald. And on behalf of McClatchy and our three Florida news organizations, I welcome you to the third in a series of panels that grew out of a Zoom-based summit we held in August with our Florida influencers. Who are the influencers? There are 50 engaged citizens from across Florida, involved in every aspect of civic and economic life, from social work to healthcare to growing our economy. They work in affordable housing, building our economy, educating our young, and protecting our elderly, and in every way represent the diversity, creativity, and energy of our great state in Florida. Each of the last three years, we brought a class of influencers together to help put a fine point on the challenges and opportunities facing Florida. This year's group focused their attention on four main areas: healthcare, education, the economy, and social justice. Since then, we have held illuminating live-streamed panels on social justice and healthcare. Videos of these sessions are available on our news websites. We'll hold our final discussion in this series in December on the future of education. We hope these discussions will allow people to step back just for a minute, hand-to-hand combat over politics, to have a thoughtful discussion about the issues and possible solutions. And today, in the midst of COVID-19 pandemic, we look at what comes next in Florida. And as Florida continues to battle this crisis, the pandemic has had a severe impact on our economic engines. As we move into 2021, what is the outlook for key businesses such as tourism, healthcare, retail, and real estate? These businesses help Florida thrive. And perhaps most importantly, what does that mean for the workers in these industries as jobs are curtailed or disappear? What will replace them? To address these issues, I'd like to hand off to Miami Herald business editor Jane Wooldridge and a panel of thought and business leaders from Insights, and perhaps give us some answers into our future. Jane?
Hi, thank you, Nancy. Thank you to all in our audience for being with us today, and especially thank you to our panelists for sharing their time and their expertise. I'd like to introduce them to you now. And they are Beth Azor, president of locally based retail analysis firm Azor Advisory Services. Virginia Haley, she is the president of Visit Sarasota County and the immediate past chair of the Visit Florida Board of Directors. Ann Machado, founder of Creative Staffing, which matches workers with companies in temporary and permanent positions in clerical, light industrial, and accounting industries, to name but a few, working here both in South Florida and in Dallas, Texas. And Abby Amadumbe, economist with PNC Financial Service Group and a close observer of the Florida economy. Welcome today to all of you, and thank you again. As we look forward a little bit, let's take 1 minute to look back. A year ago, Florida's unemployment was at 2.9%, an amazingly low figure, and U.S. unemployment was at 3.5%. Everybody was looking forward to a banner 2020. Today, because of the COVID pandemic crisis, we are in a very different place. The U.S. unemployment rate in September was 7.9%. Though it has trended down a bit in October to 6.9%. Florida's unemployment rate in September, which are the last statistics available, was 7.6%. So a bit of a different picture, and perhaps most tellingly, when we think about tourism, which is one of our primary industries, we've seen quite a drop-off there. Before we go deeply into tourism, though, let's talk to Abby about what you have seen, not just where we've come from the past, which we just talked a little bit about, but where do you see Florida's outlook in the next 6 to 9 months?
All right, thanks for having me again. So as you mentioned, the economy was in great shape November 2019. Florida was experiencing record low unemployment. the unemployment rate was 2.8% in November 2019. And economic growth was very solid. So there was wage growth, the labor market was very healthy, and consumers and businesses were doing very well. And then we had this viral recession in February, which was primarily a services sector recession. So this recession really affected jobs in leisure and hospitality, jobs in retail, and so on. So due to this viral recession, the unemployment rates increased from the record low 2.8% in November last year to around 14% in April. Now, the bright side of things is that economic activity has improved since shelter-in-place restrictions were relaxed. Economic activity is trending in the right direction, and the unemployment rate now is around 8%. Now, the downside risks to that outlook are first the resurgence of the crisis. So we've been seeing record high numbers of coronavirus cases nationally. We've seen many countries in Europe go back into shelter-in-place restrictions. So this remains the biggest risk to the recovery. Another risk of the recovery is the absence of fiscal policy. So it's extremely imperative for there to be additional stimulus passed by Congress in order to make this recovery strong. In our forecasts, we assume that there's going to be about 1.5 trillion of additional stimulus passed by Congress in the next few months. So putting it all together, record low unemployment last year, we had the viral recession in February, things are headed in the right direction, but then we need additional stimulus and we need to have complete control of the virus in order to get a full recovery.
So Abby, a quick follow-up question before I pull in some of our other experts here. If we have a stimulus package, do you think that we're on the right road? And what's the general forecast for how long it takes for Florida in particular to be heading in a stronger, consistent, positive direction?
Right. So it is possible for this recovery to continue without additional stimulus, but it's going to be a very sluggish economic recovery for both Florida and also the national economies. So if we do get additional stimulus in the next couple of months, our forecast is that the economy will return back to the pre-pandemic level by the end of this year. So if we're able to control the virus and additional stimulus is passed by Congress, we expect Florida's economy to return back to its pre-pandemic level at the end of next year.
Terrific. That would be much more cheerful than some of the earlier forecasts that we saw, which Virginia brings me immediately to tourism, of course. It's one of our key industries statewide. Initially, experts were predicting that it might be 4 full years before the industry fully rebounded. That, of course, was for the land-based hospitality business. We have a significant player in Florida, which is the cruise industry, that remains on hiatus from the coronavirus ban. And in fact, just this morning, Carnival Corp announced that it will delay resuming cruises at least until the end of January. We all expect the other lines to follow suit. And we've seen a good number of continuing layoffs across the hospitality industry. So from where you sit, both in your part of the state and also from talking with tourism leaders across the rest of the state, where do you see this picture heading? When will we have a full rebound to hospitality?
I think the full rebound, particular on the leisure visitation side, should come about at the end of 2022, 23 at the latest. The challenge is in the whole meeting and group business sector. We've seen here in Sarasota, all of Southwest Florida, we've actually seen weekends, even now into October, where hotels are close to being sold out. But then during the week, when you normally have the business traveler in your groups, it drops down to 20, 25, 30% occupancy. And you're seeing that on both coasts. And we really don't think, even by 23, will be back to those 19 levels on business. And partly because people are doing just what we're doing here. They have found that for some meetings, it does work to do it on an online basis. But we also know that if you're a marine company out of Fort Lauderdale trying to introduce a new boat line to your dealers across the country, you really cannot drive a boat virtually. And that's the kind of business that will bring us back.
And what kind of impact, one of the things we haven't mentioned so far is the possibility, and looks every day more encouraging, around getting a vaccine that would be effective for a large number of, perhaps almost all of the population that chooses to take the vaccine, which is another hurdle. Virginia, do you think that the vaccine will help jumpstart the meetings and conventions industry, or is there going to be continual lag because businesses are going to try and save money with exactly what we're doing now?
I think really with the business travel, the vaccine will have a huge impact. And I think businesses also will begin the process of working out the liability issues. We've heard from some that there's just a concern they're not ready to send their people back out on the road. So I think with the vaccine and the continued health measures, I mean, we've seen big changes in how hotels operate, how meeting facilities operate, and I think that they will probably stay with us for a time, even after the vaccine.
That sounds great. Beth, let's come to you for a second. You're in retail, you're a retail advisor, and even before the pandemic, of course, we had an ongoing conversation about a retail apocalypse. In Florida, retail and tourism are closely linked. A lot of our retail business comes from those visitors. I live near enough to Miami International Airport to see those huge crates heading south, and have been a frequent shopper in places that send those huge crates south. How do you see retail playing out here in South Florida, in the state as a whole, because there's so much link? Does the tourism slowdown really hit us?
So I have some great news for everyone. The independent retailer's stamina and spirit is on fire. And I believe it's because of the influx of people from the Northeast and the Midwest. So I have had 2 in-person meetings with landlords and leasing agents around the South Florida community from Palm Beach South, and new businesses opening up are on fire in South Florida since March, on fire, really since we reopened in May. And it's, I would say, 75% are restaurants. So like I said, the spirit and the stamina of the independent mom and pop retailer, we're blessed to be in South Florida. The rest of the state, I'm hearing, is doing very well as also, but South Florida is on fire, Jane.
Well, that's great news. And it brings us to the topic of real estate, which that's something we cover very closely here at the Miami Herald, of course. It's a big industry here. One of the things that we have seen is that residential real estate is very much in demand here. Inventory is very low, as a lot of people from up north have finally seen the wisdom of moving here to Florida. They're starting to catch on. We've also seen construction trades remain strong. We've seen some fall off in the commercial sector. We've seen a lot happening on the warehouse front. So Abby, from where you're sitting, we've seen construction jobs stay pretty strong and steady throughout. I think they're only down maybe a portion of 1% since the pandemic erupted. What do you see as the prognosis for real estate going forward?
All right. So before I speak about that, so there's been a slight change in the share of sectors in Florida over time.
Okay.
So the leisure and hospitality industry, which has remained about 15% of total employment, has been constant over time. But then there's been strong gains in the construction sector. And this is mainly due to the record low interest rates. So mortgage rates are at record lows, and also due to the stimulus that was passed by Congress. So consumers' personal disposable income increased even during this recession, and so folks have a lot more um, income available to make purchases. Um, Commercial real estate, however, is seeing the opposite trend. So we're seeing a downward trend in commercial real estate, and that's because a lot of folks are working from home and lots of offices are empty, and that's a trend which we expect to continue into 2021. So residential real estate has been very positive. It's been very strong. We expect that to continue to support economic recovery into 2021, but commercial real estate is going to be a drag on the economy.
In fact, just this week, I spoke with two top developers of office, Class A office, one in Fort Lauderdale and one here in Miami. And they both say they are leasing, but it's much smaller spaces than in years past. So I think we're all working from home as a part of all of our lives going forward, which really brings me to Anne. Anne, you have said something that I think many people may find quite surprising, which is that there are jobs going unfilled. Tell us more about that and what kinds of jobs.
Well, all kinds of jobs, but the ones you would expect, anything that you're using, so grocery stores, delivery services, the need for drivers and delivery people is unbelievable. Anything that's personal care, home health aides, health services, cleaning services, they can't get enough people. And there are reasons why that is so. There's also a lot of jobs actually available for white collar and professionals. But on that side, we're seeing that we can't get the people placed. So the interview takes place virtually quite easily. And people decide that this looks like a perfect match, but when they go to do the onboarding, they find it very difficult with everyone working from home, and the process needs to be different. So there just are barriers to employment everywhere, and I hope that we can find ways to rethink the old ways to the new ways that we'll need in order to get people back to work.
Talk a little bit more about that. That's really interesting. I think I've been, granted an interview, offered a job, and couldn't quite get to the plate there. It would be very frustrating, both for the employer and the employee. So, what are some of those barriers to entry that you see that need to be resolved?
Well, the biggest problem we're having right now, I've been in staffing for more years, 40 years, 50 years, I don't know, a long time. This is probably the worst recruiting environment I've ever been in. So that's very counterintuitive. Most people think there aren't jobs. The fact is that a lot of people don't want to work because they're getting unemployment, or they're deathly afraid of the virus and bringing it into their homes, or they're home taking care and homeschooling children. And then once you do get them on and think that they're going to start a job, many, 50% don't show up at all. Something happens between the hire and the start, and who knows, they panic or they get offered more money. We've always had a wage problem here in South Florida, and it couldn't be more acute than it is now.
Well, that's also an interesting thing. We wrote a story last year. We're getting ready, heads up, we're getting ready to publish one in a couple of hours that says that millennials in the state of Florida make less money than millennials anywhere else in the country. We're now seeing a generation of, I'm not going to call them digital nomads because those are something a little bit different, but a digital workforce. All of us are doing it right this second. We're the digital workforce. And does that mean that Florida employers will need to spend more to get good talent? Or does it mean that people will move here but work for employers outside the state? What, Abby, let's go to you on that one first, and we'll come back to Anne, because there's clearly an economic impact on this one.
Yeah.
Right. So our self-service and automation solutions are very positive for the long-term economic potential of Florida. But in order for them to, get the best out of the workers, there has to be there has to be low unemployment. So, I mean, now perhaps is not the best time to introduce such measures. But when the economy is in solid shape, once we're close to pre-pandemic levels, or when the economy is getting closer to where we were pre-pandemic, then these solutions will be very effective for the long-term economic potential of Florida.
So good, positive, long-term outlook, little less so in the short term. And if I'm looking for a job today, and we have some reader questions, audience questions that are asking about this. If I'm looking for a job today, what kinds of jobs am I going to find? What are they going to pay? Are there white collar jobs as well as less skill measured jobs?
Right.
What are you seeing out there?
Right. So,
Well,
sorry. Should I go?
Well, let's ask Ann first and then come back to you.
Okay.
so there are lots of different kinds of jobs, white collar and blue collar, but that's where the problem starts. So you had a column by Gypsy Medalist the other day that just struck at my core, where she talked about how people, the Haitian community, a lot of them have the language issue and the digital issue. All of the jobs are now online. You can't get a job any other way. So if you're trying to apply for work on a cell phone and you don't speak English, you've got a huge problem. So therefore, we as a community, and Gypsy was calling out for the need for more digital training. So I'm going to say that the unskilled and semi-skilled worker that isn't using a computer has a whole set of different issues. White collar workers that can apply online and network and do all of the recruiting things they need to do, all they need is an opportunity and the right path to that job. So, it just isn't a one size fits all. And some jobs that are out there in the medical fields, we have a huge demand at all levels. And if you don't have medical training, you can't access that job and the employer can't hire you. So as you all know, we're bringing traveling nurses in from all around the country. Hopefully some will stay. We're seeing more and more people move to Florida because they can stay. So it's just a whole different ballgame.
Abby, what do you think? And then Beth will come to you. Sounds great.
Right. No, it is a whole different ball game. Most of the jobs that have been affected during this recession are service sector jobs. But there have been opportunities in some other industries. So the Amazon effects, which is the decline in brick and mortar stores, has seen an increase in e-commerce and digital sales. So e-commerce, digital sales, trucking firms, warehouse and distribution firms, also telecommunication companies are doing very well right now. Most folks are working from home now. We're having virtual meetings and we're doing virtual calls. So that has improved the opportunities in the telecommunications industry.
And Beth, you have something you want to jump in here with. Please do so.
Yes, I just wanted to add that many of my tenants are looking for people. Starbucks cannot get enough baristas. My hair salons can't find stylists. And based on what related to what Abby just said, before the pandemic, brick and mortar sales, out of the $5.4 trillion of brick and mortar sales, increased during the pandemic to 14.5%. So absolutely 14.5% is high, but in the 60s, where I remember I was growing up, where we used to get the Sears catalog, the Spiegel catalog, the Penny's catalog sales of retail sales at that point were 10%. So the retail brick and mortar community has always had distractions. There's always been other ways to get product. Instead of saying, oh, well, digital sales is 14.5% of the 5.4 trillion, I'm actually surprised it's not more. So even if it increases to 25%, there will still be 75% in bricks and mortar, and they want to hire people. All of my tenants, when I negotiate with new leases for tenants that want to open businesses, the number one complaint they say to me is, I don't know if I can find the people to work.
That's right.
That's fascinating. Not necessarily what we always think. So, Virginia, that brings me to tourism jobs. Recent statistics and data indicate that somewhere between 75 and 80% of the tourism jobs that existed in Florida prior to the pandemic have come back. I'm not 100% sure I believe that. I think that maybe some of those jobs have come back as part-time positions or not full hours. Is that correct, or am I missing something?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that is correct, but what we're seeing is a significant staffing challenge that, as I mentioned, Southwest Florida, Northwest Florida, all the beach areas, Thursday through Sunday, the hotels are sold out. The restaurants are full. There's tremendous business into the attractions. And then nothing during the week or close to nothing. So you've got, you've had hotels trying to bring people back on, but it's almost a schizophrenic workplace where you want people working almost 16 hours on the weekend, and then they're not getting hours during the week. And so, for the labor market and the tourism industry, you've got to get back to having decent number of hours and a consistency in the number of hours. The other thing we saw were a lot of places did lay off employees early on before the availability of PPP, and they cannot get them back. They've either been lured away into other businesses, into retail, into telecommunications, and they're scrambling to find employees as well.
So we have a little bit of a dichotomy here in that people need workers, workers need jobs, but we haven't actually managed to match the needs of workers and employers together, in part because there's an imbalance here, which tells me as a worker, if I've got a full-time job, I should probably hang on to it. If I don't have a full, Anne's going, yeah. Okay. And if I don't have a full-time job, I'm going to have to split between a couple of different jobs, perhaps.
Maybe.
So, Anne, you've been in the staffing business a long time. What advice would you have for someone right now who is either facing this kind of a challenge as a worker or someone who's looking to transition careers? I think you probably have more of the career transition aspect of this than the rest of us do here.
Well, I think, first of all, you're in the journalism business, so I think the first place we need to start is getting the right information out there. People are walking around not even looking for work because they think there aren't any jobs, but there are. Hospitality may not be what we want it to be, but if they can get 40 hours over the weekend and homeschool their kids during the week, that's not such a bad deal in a pandemic. But we have to rethink employment and work and connections and bridges to employment. It's like I keep saying, it's not a one size fits all. I do agree that people that have a job should keep their job. You never want to change jobs in an unstable environment. And then as for others that are looking for work, they need to think, where are the jobs? In the industries, Abby said, the Amazon of America, anything to do with home delivery and shopping. It's Christmas. We have a huge seasonal marketplace here. It's not focused on the cruise industry. I have a big client that was totally, their entire business was the cruise industry. They reimagined their business, went to online, and they're an art company. And they've now reemployed 50% of the workforce. They believe once the cruises sail again, that we're going to be short again with labor with them because their online will continue while their cruise industry comes back. So it's just crazy. You have to just think differently.
And if someone was a displaced worker, you know, your job just disappeared in this pandemic, what advice do you have for that person as they're seeking, they figured out they may not be able to stick in the hospitality career? We've written stories about people who love what they do, but they can't get enough hours. So what's the advice?
But it's everybody. I had a call yesterday from someone's cousin who is an architect. He's been out of work for 7 months. He worked for WeWork, and you know, he was asking my advice, and I said, you have to do the research to know who's succeeding. It and needs listening to Beth. I'm thinking that he should be doing his design work in commercial real estate and retail. But that's how he needs to think. And I'll call him back today and tell him, hey, I think we went down the wrong road. I have another friend who's a graphic artist. He's been out of work for 6 months, and he's sent out 50 resumes and been online. But if there aren't jobs for artists, you know, you have to say, well, what skills do I have that are transferable? What industries are hiring? How do I position myself as a great candidate for that industry now? So again, it's, you know, you got to think outside the box.
A great point. And, you know, Beth, that brings me back to you, because that is a lot of what the small mom and pops are doing. Large retailers have not fared well. I have seen some of my favorite places disappear. And I can't tell you that I'm a fan of buying clothes online, because most of them end up in a box going back the other way. So I'm not sure that this is the end all be all. But when you are talking to people about where they're looking for employees, where are they looking? Are they looking for seasonal hires since we're going into the holidays? Are they looking for younger workers? Are they looking for anybody who can run a cash register, which these days is a tablet? What are they looking for?
It's all over the board, like Ann said. My son's girlfriend just got hired as one of the 50 seasonal workers at Lululemon for Aventura Mall. And they told her group that they will keep on probably 40 of those because of the influx of people coming to South Florida. They see a huge demand of sales. My salons, they've been looking pre-pandemic, and then when they were closed, they stopped looking. But the minute that they reopened and their business came back, they've been advertising all over the place. They have signs in their windows. They have little A-frames in my sidewalks looking for stylists. So I think, like Ann said, it just depends. You know, we're so blessed because of our weather down here. We are going to absolutely have more and more people. I think there's been a pent-up demand in spending. And I think that all of us that have not gone on vacation, you know, we've gone to Disney. I went to Disney as the Visit Florida person said. We went to Disney, and during the week it was empty, which was great for us. And then during the weekend it got so busy. But we are tracking sales of our tenants, and our tenant sales overall in our portfolio are at 89% of pre-pandemic sales. Which,
wow.
If you factor in the fact that they were closed for 2.5 months and then they were at lower occupancy, they're beyond. So I think we have a pent-up demand of sales. We haven't traveled. We haven't sent our kids to camp. We haven't celebrated graduations, birthdays, etc. I'm predicting a great holiday season in all of retail, bricks and mortar and digital. But the bricks and mortar people are looking to hire people. If you need a job, go to the malls, go to your local grocery anchored shopping centers, and just walk in and ask the managers in a business. My son likes hobby stores. He was working at Burger King, and I opened a hobby store. He goes, oh, hobby store. And he went and he got a job at the hobby store. So follow what your passion is. I know that's cliche, but there are, just like Ann said, a lot of people looking for workers.
So, Abby, we're several of us here are in South Florida. You and Virginia are the people who have a broader statewide perspective. Is the story that you're hearing that there are jobs available and these industries are looking for jobs, is this across the board in Florida?
Right. So we've seen a quicker than expected recovery in several industries. The leisure and hospitality jobs has recovered about 80% of the jobs lost. So as more shelter-in-place restrictions are relaxed, as folks start going outside more, then there'll be more opportunities to work in positions that were closed during the pandemic.
Okay, and Virginia, you focus on tourism, but you live there on the west coast of Florida. Are you seeing the same kind of vibrancy, at least on the weekends, that we're talking about in South Florida?
Very vibrant. The real estate market is also incredibly strong. They're tied together. We're seeing an awful lot of people who do have that opportunity to work remotely, who are coming down and basically moving their work with them. Yeah. And I think that's going to be one of the huge opportunities for our whole state, is as an attractive place for these remote workers to resettle, have a really great quality of life. I ran into one woman who moved here to Lakewood Ranch in Sarasota because of the strength of the local schools, the soccer programs for the children, and she no longer has a rush hour commute.
I can applaud the no rush hour commute for sure. That's one of the things I really don't miss at all. One of the things, because I, as you know, have covered the tourism industry closely for a long time, I know a lot of destination marketing organizations. The buzzword in the industry would be DMO, but a lot of the marketing organizations have suffered huge cuts in their own staffs. What does that mean for a state like Florida, where we depend on tourism? Not entirely, but so much so. Is that something that we need to take a look back at? Those are mostly funded by bed taxes. Bed taxes are down because people haven't been sleeping in those beds. Where does this take us in terms of getting the tourism industry back on track 7 days a week, not just 2 or 3?
Well, I think we do see a little bit of two Floridas. You see a lot of the Southwest Florida, Northwest Florida, many of the coastal areas that did not have the expected drop in tourist tax that they thought in March. Obviously, it was down, but it was not down as severely. And the layoffs have not been as steep. I know here at Visit Sarasota, we're not a government agency. We went from 20 FTEs down to 13, but many of those were our part-time visitor center staff. So, we're down to basics. We're not on the road the way we used to be. We're doing it digitally. We've changed the advertising mix. We're being smarter with fewer people and fewer dollars. And that's how we're just going to have to slowly but surely climb our way out of it. It's the toughest in those destinations that are really convention-based destinations, and they're really struggling at the moment.
And if I may add to what Virginia said, Florida remains a very attractive destination. The domestic migration trends are very strong. So you have folks moving from New York, New Jersey, and other parts of the country, especially during these times when lots of folks can work from home. The strong demographic trends will, contribute to the long-term potential of Florida and will make the outlook, more positive.
And may I also add that when we talk about the unemployment rate, it measures people that are collecting unemployment. And some people want to collect unemployment. It's a way to stay at home, get a check. It's safe until that vaccine comes out, which thank God it looks like we're going to start seeing distribution very, very soon. a lot of people don't want to work. So that number that used to measure people that were looking for work that couldn't get work is measuring something a little different this time.
Well, and yet, I think our max out benefit in the state of Florida is $275 a week. And I can't do much with that, although it's better than nothing.
I get the list for our company, and I can tell you most of the people that we employ, so unskilled and semi-skilled and clerical, they're lucky if their check is more than $150. So that $275 that we can't live on for most people isn't anything close to that. So that's why we have the people lining up for food. I mean, we talk to these people. It's heartbreaking when you're afraid to work and you know there's a job, but you do the math and figure out that without the expenses and the need to school your children, you're better at home and sitting in a food line whenever there's a handout. It's horrible. The working poor have my heart. These are not people sitting on the couch watching TV. These are people that are looking to us for solutions. And I hope that you, Jane, in the communications business, will start getting the messages out. I mean, I have my Business Monday right here behind me, and you nailed it. When you talk about the small businesses and Beth, where they can't get enough people, everyone needs to know that there are jobs out there and that they could be working if they want to, and that our economy, Abby has given us a lot of really good news about our economy. And Beth, I mean, things aren't as bad as we think.
But we can help too. So the listeners and the readers can help. So I've been on a big push. There will be a huge lack of corporate parties and corporate gifts this year. But there's a budget line item for these things. So we can push the message, shop local, love local, and to Virginia's point, visit local. So, and my vacation this year was Disney with my kids. We're looking to travel, and I'm looking at the Panhandle. I'm actually looking at Sarasota and Bradenton. So Virginia, I'll come visit you. So shop local, live local, visit local, love local. So we can all help each other in the state of Florida by supporting these small businesses.
So go ahead.
I'm sorry. That's been really what has sustained us and sustained the different tourism businesses around the state are Floridians. And I will say in Sarasota, generally in the summertime, people from Miami, Fort Lauderdale will go to Naples, Sanibel, Fort Myers. They usually don't come quite up as far as Sarasota. And we were Miami West Coast for most of the summer. They discovered us, and I think a lasting impact for Sarasota is we are now a destination for people from Southeast Florida when we never were before. So there are some lasting benefits to everything that we're going through. And when people talk about a driving trip, it used to be 3-4 hours for a drive trip. People are willing to drive 10, 11, 12 hours for a vacation. So you can go all the way to Pensacola.
That's a long drive. I've made that. I'm going to ask about one more obstacle, and then I'm going to go back to this really wonderful conversation we're having around solutions. So obstacle. Everybody's going to ask this question. You've all alluded to it. Is it safe to, and I'm going to ask, we'll just do a round robin here. Is it safe to go out and shop, have a job in a retail setting, travel? And I have to say, I have been on airplanes, so I know people do this. Is it safe to do these things at this point in time? And Beth, I'll start with you, and we'll go around my screen here. So Beth first.
Well, I'm sure there's no surprise that I'm not going to say, of course, it's safe to shop. I think that we need to be cautious. I think we need to wear masks. I think we need to use sanitizer. I don't think we should be reckless, but I've been shopping since May 28th when they opened the doors. My tenants have been open. I have supported the restaurants with to-go and curbside pickup. This is how we don't want to see our small businesses evaporate. That will be the worst for job creation. So I personally have been eating out inside restaurants. You know, luckily we have the weather, we can sit outside. So I'm a huge proponent. Go out, wear your mask, you know, sanitize and social distance, but go out and support our local businesses.
Okay. Virginia, I have traveled. I have stayed in hotels. I have been on airplanes. And I have done so very cautiously, but so far we're feeling pretty good. I have also given up the point where I actually take my own Santa wipes to every hotel. So I think I've gotten over that stage. Virginia, what are you hearing from your constituents and from visitors who come?
Well, of course, I was always that crazy lady long before COVID that always carried my Santa wipes, and it's never going to change for me. What we're seeing is it's really divided in thirds. There's a third who have already been traveling, who are comfortable with eating out, going to retail, who appreciate the safety measures. That is incredibly important. If they're walking into a restaurant and they see the staff with the mask under their chin, a lot of them will walk right out again. You see a third who will take some tentative trips within the state. And then there's about a third who, for a number of different reasons, are saying we are just not going to travel until a vaccine is widely available. And that could be because of their own personal health, someone in their family. So we really concentrate on those who exhibit behaviors that they're open to travel and invite them to Sarasota.
It sounds like a good plan to me. And you've alluded to, you have people who aren't comfortable going out to work. They may have complications at home.
But I have hundreds who are working every day, and a lot of them are on production lines. So they're standing close to other people. So if there was ever a recipe for disaster, I'm it, of course. But that hasn't happened. And it's because we were very careful to work with our customers, find solutions, safety solutions together. So we have monitors at every door checking temperatures every day. Every person that comes in, whether it's an employee, an associate, a vendor, they were given, I should have worn my mask. I have a creative staffing mask. Every temp has a mask. If you won't mask, it's a bona fide job requirement. So we have not had problems, and the work is safe. But if people have health issues with children at home or family, or, you know, people in their family, it's not necessarily the worker that's afraid to go to work. It can just be someone in the home. But I'm very proud of what we've done in partnership with our clients. They wanted people to be there, and like I say, they need more workers than we can give them, but at least we've kept them in business. And I just want to say, not that I'm bragging, but I will, but year over year, creative staffing sales are actually up. So
that's great.
Focusing on the right clients, getting rid of the people that weren't following the rules. We told them we can't send people to you. We won't. Well, you know my values, and once you do that and they realize they have to be a great employer, and they have to be willing to protect the health care of their employee. And if they won't, people are out that door, just like the restaurant where, if they're wearing their masks under their chin, people won't come in. It's the same in the workplace. If there's not safety protocols in place, people won't come to work. We've all got it. We're all in this together.
So Abby, from the macro perspective, you did talk at the beginning of our conversation here about a COVID resurgence could prove to be, and we nationally certainly we're in one now, it could be a economic headwind. What do you think is required to keep that as much at bay as possible? And I'm thinking in part not only about industry solutions, such as workplace ones that Ann's talked about, but also solutions from government mandates. We've had some questions from some of our audience about what role does government play, could government play, should it play? We have a different president-elect now. Where does this take us?
Right. So the first part of the question is we know a lot more about the virus now than we did early on. So my expectation is that we manage it much better going forward. But regarding the election outcome, we don't change our forecasts based on what happens in the election. What the most important factor driving the economy right now is the path of the pandemic. So the sooner we're able to get that under control, the sooner we're able to reach our full-time potential. And also, what matters the most is what happens in Senate. So there's going to be 2 runoff elections in January. That's going to determine what happens with trade policy, with tax policy, with spending policy. And then we can, forecast how the economy is going to perform in 2021.
Okay, so the answer is we don't really know yet, but we're somewhat hopeful. Let's call this cautiously optimistic.
Correct.
What kinds of are there? And I'll come back to you last, Abby, because I know this is a bit difficult from where you sit, but from where some of the others of you sit, and Beth, we'll keep going around the circle here. What measures do you think that either a local economy, industry group, government could take? You can pick your choice to encourage a rebound here economically.
So I always say that sales and population cures all ills, right? So I think we encourage others from the Midwest and Northeast to come to Florida. I know when I say that, people say, oh, but the traffic, but we want people to come to our beautiful state and spend money here. Even if they only want to come for the winter season, it will help all of our small businesses and large businesses. So first and foremost, let's encourage others to come to Florida and spend their money, and let's welcome them. So I think that's number one. And number two, if we can, if we don't want to go out to businesses, let's support the businesses by ordering in. And if we own companies and we were going to have a Christmas party, let's reinvest those funds that we're not spending back into our local economy with our local mom and pop retailers and restaurants.
Okay, so Virginia, one of the things that I'm not going to try and take us down the political road here because this could go any which way. But it has often been the case in Florida that getting funding for tourism promotion has been controversial, not always easy. Forget the politics of it. Is more tourism promotion something that would benefit the state at this point, or is it too early for that to have an impact, and what might have an impact?
I think what's really has an impact is to continue to encourage Floridians to explore their own state. It's a huge state. And so people need to discover the state that they're in. We live in the vacation state. So I think activating that Visit Florida was actually marketing in state this year, which is not something they normally do. And then really focusing on those markets that have always shown a love for Florida and continue to really look at those. Look at the opportunities. You heard Southwest Airline, a brilliant strategy of expanding their service during this time when everyone else is pulling back. Well, guess what? They're expanding into Florida destinations. So looking for those opportunities, and the funding and the politicians, luckily we have our funding for Visit Florida through June, and we're really looking at deploying it in a very smart and creative way, which actually the Visit Florida board will be talking about tomorrow.
Well, then we'll all stay tuned to that. And you talked about something that is sometimes controversial, but I think our health experts tell us that it's really important, which is mask wearing and the businesses that require masks, those that are requiring masks. Not only, I guess my question is this, not only is that a matter of safety, but does that encourage workers to feel safer in those environments? Not only a matter of actuality, but perception.
Absolutely. I think we've only had one mask incident actually where someone refused and they wouldn't leave. They became belligerent. We called the police and had them escorted off the property and banned. We're just, when you have a system, a value system that says this is the way it is, it's just like when you walk into a store and it says no mask, no service. They put it right on the door that that's the way it is. It's just unfathomable to me that anyone would risk their own health and that of the people they work with. But Florida's a crazy state, so our governor doesn't think it's necessary to wear a mask, so we have to rely on ourselves, and my company has a mask requirement.
What other solutions or advice do you have for businesses or individuals, both creating a perception of safety, forget for a moment the actualities, but how else do you help? There are all these jobs out there going unfilled. How do you encourage people to fill those jobs?
Well, I think I started with, I think we have a communication problem, and I'm going to end with, I think we have a communication problem. I don't think people do know how safe the workplace is. I mean, of course, if you're working in a hospital with COVID patients, we see it on the news every night, the people that pass away. Most of them, though, it's not job related. So, but we're not telling people it's safe if you wear a mask and sanitize and, or socially distance, which most of our jobs, we've arranged for it to be socially distanced. So we need better messaging. And then we need to understand that a lot of the people that need the message, they're not reading a newspaper, sadly, because I think the Miami Herald does a tremendous job of trying to tell it like it is, like it really is. But we have to look for other ways to get those messages out there. Florida's a great state. Abby was telling us how good the economy is, and Beth, I mean, like I said, my company's doing great. I'm only sitting here thinking, how much better would it be for all of us if we could fill the jobs we have? How do we do that?
Abby,
Yep.
If you could talk about one thing or two things that you think would really help catapult our economy over the next 6 months to a year, A, if you'll tell us that, and then B, we're going to do a final closing round here because we only have a couple of minutes left of what's each of your prediction for where we will be in your sector in this time next year. So, Abby, give us some advice and then tell us where we're headed.
Sure. So the first advice I'll say is, workplace development. I think if companies, emphasize workplace development, workplace training in order to train folk from, entry level up to the upper ranks. And secondly, most importantly, there's a direct correlation between the number of coronavirus cases and also economic activity. So the sooner we're able to, obey social distancing measures and do whatever we need to do to reduce the occurrence of this virus, the sooner Florida is going to reach its economic potential.
That's great. Great advice. So, and a good correlation to bear in mind. Low coronavirus rates mean more economic activity. So, lightning round, where are we a year from now, Abby?
A year from now, end of 2021, we expect Florida to be, very close to its pre-pandemic level. We expect to have distributed and efficiently pass the vaccine around. Hopefully people do use it, but based on the trajectory, based on the quick recovery of the Florida economy so far, we're still far from where we were pre-pandemic, but the recovery has been much quicker than we expected. But we expect Florida to be very close to its pre-pandemic level by November next year.
Terrific. Beth, a year from now, where are we?
We will exceed where we were pre-pandemic. The sales of the tenants will be skyrocketed on one condition, that we are not closed down again. If we close down again, it would be awful for the mom and pop businesses.
Okay, we've got that. Virginia, what's your prediction?
My prediction is that with the vaccine widely circulating in our population, we're going to see domestic tourism really take off, much in the way we did after SARS. That people will be comfortable traveling all around the United States and perhaps put off their international travel. But this will be a domestic travel surge that will help bring us back closer to the 19 levels.
That would be great news. And Anne, what do you think?
I know my business is going to be booming because it's already doing really, really well. The one point I did want to make is that because of the labor shortage now, wages are going up. I believe you did a story on this at the Herald about how wages of low-wage earners are going up faster than any other wages. So for me and my business, that's very, very good when there's a wage war for workers. So I see a very bright future. And I think companies are going to use temporary services as they come back, just so that they can have some flexibility in their workforce until they're truly satisfied that their business is where it needs to be to support wage.
Well, I want to thank all of you for your time today. This was really insightful for all of us, more optimistic than I might have expected, and some of our listeners might have expected. So that is great news and a great way for us to go into holiday season. I want to wish everybody safety, wear those masks, and be hale and hearty, and let's look forward to a great 2021. Thank you to all of you for being with us today. Take care now.